What's up, everybody? Let me know if you are here watching and hanging out with us. And to make sure, yeah, there we go. Yeah, we're starting a new book tonight, which I am thoroughly excited about. It's going to be a good one. What's up, Hunter? Dude, how are you enjoying spring break? Man, this week just absolutely got away from me and from a friend. It's been a bit crazy, but yeah. It's good. Have y'all done anything fun? Anything fun for spring break? So, as Hunter types out that, if there's anything fun. What's up, Brian? How are you? We are doing this book, Becoming a King, tonight, which I am really excited about this book, okay? But here's the deal. I'm also excited to hear about Creed 3. So, Creed 1 and 2 are legitimately some of my favorite movies. Obviously, I enjoyed the Rockies years ago, but the Creed movies are so stinking good. I just binge watched them last weekend, or I guess the weekend before, right before Creed 3 came out, and was just reminded how good they are. Michael B. Jordan, if I could be any man, he would be the one, I think, because that's a good-looking man. He's a great actor. He's kind of become my new guy that if he's anything he's in, I want to go see. So, yeah. Let me know how it was, because I wanted to go see it this week, but it's just been too crazy. Really? Okay, I literally talked to somebody tonight that felt like the opposite, that it was better than the other two. So, we'll see. I'll be the judge then. So, okay. So we are, I know. Who was I talking to? Give me a minute. Let me think. I don't know. Who was I talking to? I don't talk to that many people. Who was it? Somebody that I saw today said that Creed. Oh, yeah. Chase, yeah, Chase went on the mission trip with us to Memphis last year. Chase said it was better than the first two. It's true though, Hunter. It's true though. Okay, so we're doing this book, Brian. I know you got this book. This is a really interesting book. I don't know how long you're going to hang out, Hunter, but this is a really interesting book that is written by, and we're going to jump in with the guys here in a little bit, but it's written by this guy named Morgan Snyder. And he was served in churches and served with a ministry called Wild at Heart, which those of us that are older may remember those books. So he kind of served and did a whole bunch of things, but it's about his kind of process in understanding. He was a good, godly man. And then he kind of sought out leadership and counsel from older wise men around him. And so in the midst of that, he grew and he understood better of what it means to actually become a man of God and to become a man after God. Okay, good, Brian. Well, actually, chapter 3 is interesting, and we're going to spend some time talking about it, but not necessarily talking through all the details of it. We're going to talk a lot trying to define terms that are found in chapter 3. So I think it'll actually be good because it'll kind of help going into chapter 3. But it's really good. It's a bit interesting at points, but I'm really feeling challenged by it. And so, yeah, it's been really good. But we're doing, I think, 2 to 3 chapters a week. So, yeah, let me know, Brian, what you think. What you think about it up to this point. But yeah, so basically I'm waiting for the crew to get on so we can do whatever. It's probably gonna be 20 minutes or so for them. So kind of like last time, we can go through some Bible stuff. We can go through things that God's been showing you and kind of go through some of the forward of the book. How's your quiet times been? What's some things that God's been doing in your heart? Or we can go do a pastor reacts to the NF song Hope to that video. So, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. You guys let me know. Speaking of, Hunter, are you doing a reading plan this year? I know you did Through the Bible in a year last year, or at least for a chunk of the year. I don't know if you finished it, but are you doing one, or are you trying to stay with that one to finish it? Which one are you doing? Yeah. What are you doing for your reading plan this year? Nice. Okay. Why 260 days? Is that because you started late, or is that because that's the plan that you're doing? And are you doing it through the Bible app or something different? Because I'm very intrigued by the New Testament in 260. That's awesome. Okay, that's good. Because it goes slower. The issue with the Bible through a year is it gives you a really good scope of the story, but you don't sit in anything for very long. And so you end up missing a lot. And I think I really enjoyed it. And it was truly fantastic. As much as anything, because I actually finished it in a year. The first year I did it, I did not last year. But I finished it in a year the first year. And so it gave me a really good kind of scope of scripture that was really fun, and kind of to see how the stories connected together in a better way. But I would love to do a longer, shorter study. So a shorter in like amount of reading, but over a longer period of time. So New Testament 260 is going to be perfect. Yeah. So how far are you in? Where are you into it? Or did you just start? Like a week. So are you doing, is it chronological, or is it like hop through the Gospels at least? Or does it just Matthew, then Mark, then Luke, then John? How does it kind of go? Or is it like chronological where you read a couple of verses in Matthew, you go repeat the story in Luke, and the next day maybe read something in Mark that isn't in any of the other Gospels? Okay. Why is the ordering weird? I'm very intrigued by this now. I'm very intrigued. And what about you, Brian? Are you doing any Bible reading plans, or do you just hop in, and how do you choose what you're reading for your time with God? Really? Okay, I'm very confused. First off, it a little bit stresses me out, Hunter, that you don't know, because I feel like that's something that I need to know before I start it. But then Mark, it'd be interesting to, it doesn't surprise me that much. You just hop in and do it. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's really cool. Yeah, that's what when I did the Bible in a year, I did a chronological one. And that was fantastic. Fantastic. It was a lot of fun. So right now I'm doing, I gotta pull it up, this one called, it's actually for women, which is kind of funny. And I knew it could be because one of the people that I looked up, her name is Jen Wilkins. Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I was telling you, man. It's been absolutely crazy. And then I'm leaving tomorrow for the men's retreat. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 text message threads in one day, my friend. 20 text messages. So I did see your message, and it got lost in the chaos. Yeah. It's a no-go this week. So we're trying to sell our house. We're moving. Not far. I just like to watch people stress out. We're like, wait, what does that mean? Are you leaving Waterbrook? No, not at all. We are moving to a different part of Wiley. We're trying to. And it's been, we're not leaving. Don't worry, Hunter, we're not leaving. It's been a beating of a process. I mean, absolute beating of a process. We're like almost 2 months into it. Had, I think, 15 contracts almost. It's been crazy, but we finally signed a contract tonight that will be the final contract, whether good or bad. This one's it. So, dude, I appreciate it, Brian. It has been a week. So I told you last week we had, let's see, what was last week? Last week was when we were showing it, right? No, No. Last week was when it all started to fall through. Yeah. So we had 20 showings and 5 offers in 3 days. That's awesome, dude. And every contract that we tried, including some new ones, just kept falling through all weekend long. Like it was just this constant. And it was like, and as I said last week on stream, like we feel as though God has led us to this new house and has opened the door to this beautiful house, this beautiful neighborhood. It's a place we could be at for 20 years. It's super exciting. It's where we can start like this next stage of what we want to do in life and ministry and just these things. And then every step along the way, our current house has been a no. And so it's just been a beating. And so today is like the final day. The new house is like, you got to sign something tonight. Otherwise we're moving on. And we got an offer from the couple that has fallen through twice. So we're not totally confident it's going to go through, but I think it's going to go through this time. I think. Yeah. Hunter, the first time it fell through, literally fell through on a Thursday night at like 8 o'clock, and we were supposed to close on Monday morning. It's crazy. It's been awful. I never want to sell another home in my entire life. Brutal. So tell your parents to never move. It's not worth it. But so that's what I've been up to. So anyways, this week has been crazy with more showings and trying to lock down contracts and all the things we've been trying to do to get things done that we wish we weren't doing this week. So, but we have a contract. That is a huge, huge praise. And we're supposed to close in 14 days. Yeah, 14 days, which is fast. But all the paperwork's already done with this couple because we've been with them 3 times. So we will see how it goes. Yeah, it's fast, dude. So March 24th, I think, is when we're supposed to close. So I will change my stream. So I didn't change. I guess I did move my desk and stuff around at the church, but I will have changed like 4 times in the last like 8 months, 6 months since I started streaming at the house. It's crazy. We're not totally sure where we're going to be, like where I'm going to be doing it. There's a chance though that I'm going to be under, it's a 2-story house, that I'm going to be under the stairs. It's going to be a little bit dungeony. Yeah. I know, man. So I was in one of our bedrooms, but Emery, we moved Emery over there. Yeah, very much. There's a door that Krista could put a lock on and lock me in, I guess. So I was in one of our other bedrooms with all of the stuff, Annalise's stuff, and then all their stuff. We cleaned that room out. We got rid of a ton of stuff, and then Emery moved in there so she could be across from her sisters. And then I came up into the front room, which is completely empty, but yeah, so I'm here now, but in like 3 weeks, I'll be in a new place. The problem is, so I measured it last time we went, and I don't know what's going to fit and what's not going to fit. So the width of the room of this closet is not wide enough. It's only like 39 inches. So it's not wide enough to put my 2 monitors side by side. So I don't know totally what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm going to flip one vertically and one horizontally, or if I'm going to stack them on top of each other, or if I'm going to move. So the way that it goes, all right, let's pull up something. Windows Paint, baby. We're about to pull up Windows Paint. I'm going to draw you this room, Hunter, and I want you to be amazed. All right. Okay, so this room, this is going to be terrible. No. Hey, listen, this is a big problem. Okay, so if the door, oh, y'all, this is so good. Look at this skill. So it goes like this, and like this, and then like this, okay? So this is the closet, all right? Now, proportion, let's erase this. Just a second. Don't judge me. Can I make this? This isn't Photoshop. I should totally just pull up Photoshop. That would be way easier than what I'm doing right now. But it's okay. We're already here. All right. So let that line smaller. What was I using? Brush. There we go. All right, so like this. All right, same problem, same issue. Same problem, same issue. Okay, so the door's like this. I think the door may come in like this. Okay. Oh, my mouse just died. No, it didn't. Okay. I think the door comes in like this. So this area right here is only 39 inches, right? So I could be, and so this comes down like this. So the ceiling, so in that back corner, undo. How about undo? Okay. So if you were to look at it as you're looking into the room, the ceiling light comes down like this. So the wall is like this. So I could put my stuff back here and like mount stuff on an angle, right? If I wanted a monitor like this, and then another monitor like this with a desk like right here, which could be kind of cool. Yo, this is incredible. You see this drawing, Hunter? I mean, this is top-notch stuff right here. Right? So I could mount one on the ceiling and one on the wall and come down. But I could also... That's right. But I could also come out and put the desk like this so that I have my monitors like this. The question is, am I too large to fit in this space right here to be able to get to? This would be like the ideal, because then I would sit here, the camera facing that way, so that like this whole area here is a space to, do lights or kind of whatever. It gives me the most open space. But if this area is only, I think this area is only 39, this area here is only 39 inches too. So if, it's not true though. It's not true. I'm not thinner at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure, I've not weighed myself. I'm pretty sure I've gained weight. We should do a poll of how much weight John has gained through this whole house process, because the stress Bluebell that I've eaten over the past month and a half is significant. So my desk is 20. On a piece of paper. I literally just need a piece of paper. How did you gain weight with mono? I thought you didn't feel good in mono. All right, I'm literally measuring my desk with a paper from Realty. All right, so right there, that's 22. So it's 24 inches. So if it's 24 inches, that gives me 15 inches or so to fit by. The question is, can I fit by in 15 inches? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm not going to stand up and measure myself. But if this is 11 shoulder, oh, I'm like, yeah, I'm like a solid 20 inches wide. But I guess if I turn on my profile, Hunter, how do you measure yourself? How should I do this? You're in school, right? No, that's like 11. I may be able to squeeze by that. It might work. It might work. All right, I think we're going to hop on here in a minute so you don't have to listen to me anymore. Oh, goodness gracious. It's always something around here. Where's Zoom? Not saving those changes. Zoom, where are you? I know. You would think with a master's degree I could measure myself sideways, but I cannot. All right. So we're going to set up with the boys. So we'll come to that in just a minute here. I'm going to mute myself. All right. So yeah. So we're going to see. So we're supposed to move in 2 weeks. The other problem I have is that there's no power because it's a closet, obviously. So the other problem I've got is that I am going to have to figure out where to steal power from. And then do I run a LAN cable in there through a wall? I don't know. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult. I may have to just go Wi-Fi, which is fine. Not the end of the world. I don't think. We'll see. I think I'm going to up my Wi-Fi speed, though. That's what I think I'm going to do. See, that would mean that we love our children more, Brian. My parents have marks on their walls of my kids' sizes. I don't, though. A bad parent 101. Bad parent 101. All right. I'm gonna hop in with these guys.
Yes, certificates.
All right. Hey, here's my question, Ryan. Did you go over to Brandon's tonight?
Yes.
Yet you're here online, and the guy who hosted everyone at his house is not online yet. That's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
Also, I live like 2 minutes from him, and he didn't invite me.
Oh, look, speaking of the man who can't hear us yet, but we can still make fun of him for not being on time while his brother rushed home just to be here. Okay, hey, before we get into it, how was Discord, or how was Discord? How was the audio book? What, way better?
I liked it. Yeah. So I had the audiobook. I ended up getting the ebook as well.
Yeah.
Just to be able to highlight, because the audiobook's good and I can get a bunch of stuff out of it. But while going through these streams, I don't have the highlighted.
Right.
Stuff.
Yeah, I wondered how you were going to do that. That's really smart.
Highlighted.
That's really smart. Yeah,
so
I wondered how you
just
were going to do
highlighted the stuff as I was listening to it, and it actually worked out about the same price as getting the physical book.
that. Yeah. Well, especially
So,
since Corey and I bought.
That's nice.
Although Corey bought a used one. Didn't you buy a used one, Corey?
Yeah, I did.
Did it have marks in it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Some of it's got like I mean, there's like I don't know, a little
Oh,
damage.
no.
marks on it.
Here's
I
my
can
question.
see it,
You're
but
the guy who
like
takes
a
the
dog chewed
covers.
on it.
You're the guy who takes covers off of books.
Yeah, because they get in the way.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
They're like I'm constantly like having
You
to like
just
move it.
open
That's why I do
it.
paper, because I hate the covers.
Okay, listen, that cheapskate over there. Listen, we know where the real
Yeah, that's what all the poor
thing
people
is.
say.
Yeah, that's what all the poor people say.
Thanks.
Okay, so it's March, new book, new direction. This book is called Becoming a King, The Path to Restoring the Heart of a Man. And the idea behind this book, and I'll kind of jump in with some kind of explanation for it, but he talks a lot about it in kind of the parts of the book, not the forward, whatever's between the forward and the first chapter. It's called Uncovering the Ancient Path to Becoming. But some things that I wrote down kind of as just like key things about the book is that he talks about, like, really the purpose of the book is it's for men, and he talks about that really openly and right up front, that it's for men, and it is men who are thirsty for adventure, meaning, and a recovery of their soul. It is for men who desire to engage the pursuit through a fellowship with a small heroic tribe along the way. Did any of you, when you read that, picture each other and like, he doesn't know who I'm reading this book with? Because I did. That y'all are considered my heroes, my heroic tribe along the way. No, but this sentence he wrote on, I think it was page XX, was becoming the kind of king to whom God greatly delights to entrust the care of his kingdom. So that's really the purpose of this book, is to become the kind of king who God delights to entrust the care of his kingdom, that God gives leadership to, that God gives resources to, that God hands the keys to, because he trusts and delights in us as men taking care of his kingdom in the way that we would do it. So it was kind of the start of it. I don't know if y'all read that part of the book. if there's anything that kind of stood out to you as kind of that section. Again, there were some questions that he had that I think were just good questions. What's this next decade supposed to be about? All that kind of stuff. But did y'all read that? Did anything stick out to you in that pre-chapter?
Yeah, actually, the whole question about where are you?
Mhm.
That's
Yep.
kind of what got me, right? The whole idea, like, not like physically, where are you, right? But like, where are you spiritually? Like, God's asking you, where are you with me? You know, where are we at? What level are you on? This is where I want you to get, but where
Mhm.
are you right now? And like, really kind of peeling back the layers to figure out where am I?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, it's really good, and that's such a big part of this book is this idea of like the first three chapters are a big part of taking that test on yourself about where you are, so that you can fix and change and work on some things to go forward. Is what I really felt like the first three chapters, and again, maybe 4 and 5, but for sure the first three chapters really hit a lot of is answering some of what you said, which is trying to figure out where you are and asking the right questions. So that's good. What about you, Ryan or Brandon?
No, I would agree with Corey. I didn't have a whole lot else from that first like intro section.
Same.
Cool. So again, the one of the things I marked down was that the Father's affection and assurance began to break through my lost and weary soul. And so we're gonna, as we talk tonight, some of the conversation is going to be on God's affection and assurance and how that should embolden and kind of empower us to be vulnerable before God and before others. And ultimately, he puts in here that the goal is to become a student, to become a son, and to consenting to the slow and steady process of inner transformation, which is going to kind of lead us into chapter 1, which is becoming powerful. So my opening question is, when you think of power, what do you think of? He used some examples in here. I won't give mine yet, but when you think of power, and it doesn't have to be a person, what do you think of?
I would think of, I guess, somebody that anybody would look up to, that you could always come to, whether it's for physical strength or mental strength. That's power to me.
Okay, that's good.
I was kind of thinking along the same thing. Just somebody who has more wisdom than me, or somebody who is, like you said, looked up to by other people in that same way.
Ryan?
I think I'm with Corey. I think it's the physicality power is kind of where I go to when I think of somebody in power.
That's good. Okay, so I went a completely different direction. I went to a V8 engine. So it's kind of based on example, but like, and Brian in the chat, Hunter in the chat, when you think of power, what do you think of? But for me, so I owned this little car and I hated this thing. Oh my goodness. My truck got totaled that I had since I graduated high school. It got totaled. And I decided I needed more gas mileage. So I bought this little Nissan Sentra, and it had like a little small, I'm not even, if it was a V6, it was a puniest little V6. You could possibly have probably a V4, a little 4-cylinder, and it was the most awful gas saving thing I've ever done. And it was great, and it served its purpose. And then in the hailstorm in 2016, it got totally demolished. So I went and I was like, I want a truck again. I'm in ministry again. Like, I'm ready to have a truck. And so I went and I got a truck, and I got this. I mean, Ryan and Brandon have seen it. It was a stick shift. Hunter's been in it. It was a stick shift V8 Dodge, 4.7 liter. And man, when you turned it on, it just had that low rumble of a V8 engine, and I just instantly felt part of it being more of a man when I had this car. Not that anything's wrong with having a car. Most of y'all, I think, have cars on the screen. But it was just that roar of an engine that just was like, oh, this is power to me. And I'm not a car guy. I don't know what I'm talking about. Ryan knows way more than I do. But I also wrote out just height, sport, people, things. What makes you guys feel power? So you can think about power. Something that's Corey put in there, the Rock. Yes, very much. So we
Sean
were
Connery
talking.
specifically.
We were talking. So the opposite of the Rock. We were
You would say it was
talking
a great movie.
earlier that Hunter went and saw Creed 3, and Michael B. Jordan as a boxer is power to me. Like that dude, that man is just ripped. Music is power. But for you guys, when do you feel power? When do you feel like you have power? What are you doing? What's the scenarios?
Feel powerful.
Do what?
Like, when do we feel powerful?
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's, for me, it's almost kind of what we were saying, but I'm on the receiving end of it. Whether that's like having an instance where somebody is like obviously showing you respect for whether that's knowledge in a subject or the rare times your kids show you respect, things like that.
No, that's good. That's really good. Like when a boss at work goes to you for insight and input, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have authority and influence over the situation.
Right.
That's power. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. What about you guys?
For me, I think it's when I work out. Like,
Mm, that's good.
powerful workout is just halfway through a workout when you can feel the muscles, and you just feel like work is being done.
That's good. What about you, Corey?
This might sound a little cheesy. I would say whenever I realize a lot of the decisions that I make and the choices that I make for our family impacts everybody, and they're kind of relying on me to make those choices. It kind of sets the tone for like, wow, I have a lot of power and a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's good. I think what you said is really important to understand that, well, I mean, it's a Spider-Man quote, right? Great power comes great responsibility. But it's this idea that power always includes responsibility. And that as we go throughout this book, one of the things that I feel like is constantly stressed is that there's going to be this struggle of us doing things and us trusting in God to do things. But as long as we understand that we have a huge responsibility, it kind of helps keep us grounded to not get too focused on our own power. So, what are some things that stuck out to you guys in this chapter about power? What's up, Scary? How are you, by the way?
I'd say so many examples of people in power abusing that power,
Yeah.
and how, I mean, you find out in the later chapters about the false self and what it all means for that. But just so many examples of history, just people get into power, most likely with good intentions, but abuse it a lot.
Yeah. I think the quote that I have marked that sums that up great is it's on page 4. He says, "The primary work of God is finding men to whom he can entrust his power. And the story of most men is being entrusted with power and bringing harm to themselves and those under their care." And that I think that's the entire story of the Old Testament, right? Is that since Adam, when God gave authority and power to men, most of them screwed it up. And even the great, Hebrews 11, right? The heroes of the faith, all of those men screwed up. Adam, Abraham, Moses, Noah, David, all, like the people that are some of the most important, pivotal people in Scripture screwed up their power at some point, which is really good. That's a really good point, Corey.
I think one thing I took from it was that the desire to have power is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how you kind of wield that power. I think, especially for like us in like a corporate setting, sometimes it's a lot easier to obtain and wield power in that environment, but not, so like you said, John, the people that God's actually entrusted into your care. It's much easier to exercise that power that you think you have within with the subordinates or peers at work, and then get home and not exercise the power that you're supposed to be
That's good.
exercising.
That's really good. What you, Ryan?
Yeah,
Anything stick? Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I was
Corey.
just gonna say, I think it even says in the book, like, the desire to have power is actually, that's God's image in us,
Mhm, mhm.
like that's part of it. So
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is, and again, I always want to be careful when we stereotype men or people, right? But the part of the God-given design of our hearts is to lead. That's the role that He's given us, not, but He has strict instructions on how to do it, and we often fail at it. And when we fail at it, it becomes abusive. It becomes it becomes dictator instead of kind of someone who's sensitive and compassionate and all these different things. But that desire to lead isn't a bad thing. That's what you said, Corey. That's part of God's image in us, and I think that as men we want that. I know that I do. I know that as we kind of talk about it in the coming chapters about some of our false selves versus true self. Some of mine goes to leadership, and some of mine goes with this desire to lead. What about you, Ryan? Anything stick out to you in chapter 1?
Kind of like what Corey was saying, a little bit on the lines of what Corey was saying at the beginning. At the end of, I don't know what page it is for you guys, but the end of the section, that first section, the Imago Dei, he says, he's talking about power and things and how you can, use it the wrong way. But one of it was by acts of commission, which is when power hurts other people. But the acts of omission is something that I don't often think about, is when I just fail to use the power that God's given me, or the position in my family that God's given me, or the people that He's entrusted me for care. Like when I fail to do that, I'm just kind of apathetic towards that power. Like I just don't care, and I'm not going to take care of things. And it's that omissive side of stuff that I don't really think about. Like I think when I think about power and abusing power and using power the wrong way, it's all about like the commission, like the how I'm forcing myself to use over other people or whatever, asserting myself, rather than there's also a negative side of doing it where it's just I'm not doing anything, and I'm like, God's entrusted these people in my care. I'm not doing anything.
That's really interesting. So that's really good thought. I'd be interested to see what Brian and Hunter think as well. But or even scary, like what do you see in men around you? But this idea of commission versus omission, right? So commission is maybe you leading in power and doing it wrong. So you taking the authority and the influence you have and acting in a wrong way that hurts either yourself or the people around you. Omission is being too passive, not taking the authority and the leadership that God's given you and using it for good, just not using it at all. For you guys, and I'm going to give you a second to think about it. What do you think you fall into? Which one do you fall into more? Passive or too aggressive as a leader, as a man? And it may be different. It may be different at home versus at work versus in church. It may be different. So I guess for me, and I'm kind of thinking on the fly here, but for me, I think that at home, I typically fall into more omission. I don't lead as well a lot of times. And I've done better over the last couple of months, but I don't lead as well. And then at work, it's too strong sometimes. Sometimes I have to remember I'm the young guy on staff that doesn't know very much. I've been doing this 20 years, but I don't know anything compared to the other guys that have been doing ministry for 40 years, for 50 years around me. Like the men that are around me, sometimes I just need to shut up and listen. And so, I probably struggle with different ones in different places.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm kind of the same, that at work it's easier to feel comfortable with that power than it is at home. I feel like in a job setting, corporate setting, or even church setting, if you mess up wielding power or managing that power, it's easier to be okay messing up there than it, or at least the way that I think about it. It's, if I mess up at home wielding my power or leading my family the way that I know that I need to, that stings a lot more than it does at the office. I feel like at the office I can kind of brush it off. I'll I noted that, correct that, and we'll move forward. But at home, I mean, it's the people that you see most of your life, and the people that God's, like you say, God's trusted in your care. So I feel like there's more weight to that side of it.
That's good.
Which for me makes it harder.
Yeah.
To feel comfortable doing that.
That's good. Corey, how about you?
I I'm actually, I guess, a little the opposite of you guys. This is gonna sound really bad. At work, I'd say I'm more passive, even if I know, like, let's say a senior person is telling me to do something, and I'm like, I know what you're telling me to do is wrong, but I'm gonna do it anyways. So that way, if it fails,
It's
I
on
can
you.
say, look, I'm just doing what I was told.
That's awesome.
And then at home, I think, to a fault, I can be too aggressive. Um, maybe not on the biblical side, because I know I've told you guys, I've told everybody else, I've always relied on my wife to be more of the spiritual leader, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'd say I'm more aggressive on like the financial side and stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I've got the budget. This is what we're doing. We're not doing this. We're like too aggressive, like to a fault, I'd say.
yeah. That's good. No, that's really good insight, man. That's really good. Ryan?
I honestly think it varies. I don't know that I lean towards one way like consistently in work or at home. I think it's sometimes I'm too passive at home and sometimes I'm too assertive at home and then vice versa, same at work. Like sometimes I get too assertive and sometimes I get too passive. I think there's ebbs and flows a lot and there's not like a consistent theme. But I think overall though I get too deep in either one of those things. Like there's things to work on there. Not to say that I'm great. Like I'm just even keeled and everywhere. I'm definitely not that. I'm probably either too aggressive or too passive, and probably not in that middle ground that I need to be in most often. But yeah, it definitely fluctuates.
That's interesting. Good, good, good. That's a good conversation. I think the challenge with this book is it's really asking you to dig deep in your own heart. And so it's going to be some interesting discussions on vulnerability and kind of some things we're learning about ourselves over these couple of chapters, throughout, I think, this whole month, because it hits pretty close to home for me on some parts. But what about you guys? Anything else stick out to y'all in chapter 1?
Not for me.
Cool. Okay. So
One thing.
oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. At the end there, it was talking about being present. That's a big thing that I don't even remember where I heard it, but I heard it somewhere, and it was somebody was just talking about their family or something. They were saying, regardless of what's going on, like just remember to stay present. If it's you're with your kids and you're doing something with your kids or something, be present in that moment. If you're with your wife, if you're at work, whatever you're doing, like be present in that moment. And
Here's that quote,
So
man,
the-
because I put multiple exclamations mark by this because this hits me really close. It says, rather than bringing to our families playfulness and affection, we bring fatigue and frustration. Why is it we spend our best energy at work and show up at home with mere scraps? Man, was that convicting?
there's actually an image. I think it's like from Buddhist origin or something, but there's this image, whatever they have. It's of a drop of water going down, and then there's ripples in the middle, and then you see the reflection of the drop of water on the underside. And the thought is about being in that present. You can't control what's coming to you. You can't control what happens after it gets there. But what you can control is that present, and that's what ripples out to everybody else. That's what affects everyone around you, is that present moment. And I loved that part of that chapter, talking about just stay there, stay in the present.
That's good. That's good. Why is it that you think we give so much at work and have so little at home, when I think all of us would say our priority should be home first, work second? Yet why is it that we give so much at work and so little at home?
I think it was a pretty clear answer for me, and I think it boils down to a trust issue for me of whether or not. So, dedicating so much time at work in an effort to try to be that provider for my family, and in that, having that being detrimental to me being present at home, because would focus so much on that side of it is showing my lack of trust that if I stay present in the moment and don't put as much emphasis on there, that God's still going to provide, financially or career wise, whatever have you. But I think partly trust. I think.
That's good. That's really good. What about you guys?
I
Exact
think
same.
it's I think for me, being in the position I'm in, like, I'm entrepreneur, run my own business, like that hits really hard for me, and I struggle with that a lot, about that focus into work, because like Brandon said, like provider, like it's me, like if I fail in my work, then my business fails. I have to provide for my family, with this. So I definitely struggle with that and err on the side of I need to do what it takes to make sure that this succeeds and that I do well here so that I'm taking care of my family. But, like we're saying, like in the process, am I really taking care of my family in the right way? Or am I, off focus a little bit on that?
I think it also shows kind of where my passion is misplaced at times, because at work, it's easy to get passionate behind learning a new skill, a new technology, whatever it is, and get really excited about learning something. But I feel like it's much more difficult to understand how to like learn my family and how I need to care for them than it is to just learn something new at work. I feel like that's just an easier thing for me to understand. Maybe it's the emotional side or whatever it is, but I think it comes easier to do that. It feels like it's a lot more work. Trying to lead your family.
Also,
That's
I'd
really good.
say like, yeah, at work, we're talking about power. We've got nobody's on top, right? We're trying to get to that place of power where, we've got people under us, but we're at work, we're trying to please people above us. At home, like who are we like working towards trying to, there I'm not gonna say like we're on top at home, but what I'm saying is like we don't have a boss at home.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
maybe
Right.
like
God is your
that-
boss.
There's not that
And
motivation
it's
side of it.
Yeah,
right. And it's
exactly.
hard. Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good. Well, and I think, because I mean, y'all are right. I think for me, especially in ministry, it's really hard sometimes to remind myself that there will always be people with needs. And those needs aren't bad to fulfill, but it can't come at the cost of my family. That God has given me the responsibility to care for my family first. And if I'm not doing a good job there, then my ministry ultimately is ineffective and it's useless, because if I can't take care of my kids and their needs and their spiritual needs and their, that and my wife, then what am I doing trying to lead other people? And sometimes I forget that because, I got to go do this ministry. I got to go do that ministry. And sometimes I can get so consumed with the goodness of ministry that I forget the greater good is at home. And all this said, like, it doesn't mean we don't work hard at work. It doesn't mean we don't put in a ton of energy and passion at work. It just means make sure that we have something left over. Make sure that we have something to look forward to. And I think as my kids get older and as technology gets better, it's easier for me to say, here's an iPad. Hey, y'all go do this, play this. And Dad just wants to sit on the couch for an hour, which turns into, or 30 minutes, which turns into an hour, which turns into 2 hours. And it's like, the last thing I want to do right now is get up and give my kid a bath, right? But it's to me, it was easier when they were younger because it was easier to please. It was playing, it was doing physical things. Now it's, like you said, Brandon, it's learning my kids. It's spending intentional time getting to know them in a way that makes them feel known and makes them feel loved, like their dad cares about them. And that takes time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. So that's really good. Man, okay. All right, anybody got anything else? Because this chapter's hitting. All right, so what did you guys... So you had 3 things in here in chapter 1. That the standard blueprint for the building process often has 3 components. And the 3 things that typically men say we need to do to build power is this: we need to make a name for ourselves, We need to make a little money and we need to get something going. That get something going is just the idea of building something. Which one do you feel like has the biggest draw to you in your heart and the way that God made you? So maybe instead of biggest draw, it's the biggest weakness. Is it making a name for yourself? Is it making a little bit of money? Is it the stress of money, or kind of the seeking of that, or is it just building something, doing something?
Money.
Yeah, which makes sense based on what you said earlier about the finances, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely a side of it for me. I mean, especially in the area we live in, it's very heavily materialistic environment, and it's really hard not to feel that way because every time you drive around this area, McKinney, Frisco, North Dallas, it's comparisons all over the place.
I guess it's not so much like I want to buy things. I want to buy a new car. I want to buy. I guess I don't really care about that. I mean, it's nice to have, but it's more like having a
Security.
safety net and making sure that we can at least live comfortably to where we don't have to like, I don't know, pinch pennies and cut certain like I just want to live comfortably. I don't need a lavish lifestyle. Just I don't want to have to constantly look at my bank account and figure out what can I do, what can't I do. I want to go on vacation, but I can't go here. Like I just,
Yep.
What about you, Ryan?
I think the things that I struggle with the most are, I don't know if it's making a name for myself or if it's just building. It's this idea that like I want to do something that matters. And yeah, I want to do something that matters for like the right reasons. I want to make an impact, like a positive impact in the world or in the community or whatever. But I think where I struggle with that is like, or maybe where I'm tempted to struggle with that a lot is like, but it has to matter because then you matter, right? Like that's really why I wouldn't do it, because then
Yeah.
I matter. I guess maybe it is the first one. But like I truly enjoy building things, but that is the thing, making a name for not really making a name for self, as I guess making a name for myself is the weakness there or the temptation there, but it's really the building something that matters is what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, it's
But
almost
yeah,
like that's your drive is, and
Yeah.
I think I'm similar in that I think, because I'm kind of in the same boat of wanting to go back and forth between, make a name for myself and getting something going. Cause I'm somebody that always wants to start something new. I like to start afresh. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think mine goes back to validation. And I figured this out in chapter 3 was that I think that's my biggest struggle is this pursuit of validation, of feeling like, whether it's that I'm worthy or that I'm known, and it's not always for bad reasons or for bad things, but I think sometimes it's that drives me, not the purpose behind it. And again, we'll get into that more in the 3rd chapter when we talk about true self versus false self. But I think if I'm not careful, that is my motivation to do the different things, is to make a name for myself that's ultimately validation. So what about you, Brandon?
Yeah.
No, I mean similar to those things, but yeah, I think that what you were saying, John, is something that definitely hits me, is the validation side of it. I know, like professionally, that's always been something that has always been a driver for what I do at work and what my goals are, and it is a lot of the validation, whether that's the correct, getting promoted or whatever it is. Like you want that so that you get that validation.
Yeah, that's good. So to kind of close out that chapter, again, it's the becoming powerful chapter. He talks about kind of the two things, that we are meant to be powerful. That's a part of God's design, that to become a wholehearted king, to become a man who can delight, he says in the page 9, to become a man who can delight the heart of God through what he does with the power bestowed upon him. So to become a king, a godly king, requires us to have power, but it's to become a man who can delight the heart of God. So we can delight God's heart through what he does, through what we do with the power bestowed upon us. But it's the reality too that's fallen, what did he say here? I don't think I said this earlier. Fallen kings create fallen kingdoms, and understanding that that balance has to be there. So, all right, chapter 2, becoming a son. This one was a bit confusing to me kind of early on. I felt like I got it a bit more. Again, I don't always do well with like heady things and up in the sky kind of ideas. I like to talk more practically, but it was still good. The idea is finding ourselves in our identity as God's son. But what are some things that stuck out to you in this chapter?
I think I kind of struggled to understand that concept of like the sonship.
Actually, I
concept,
wrote that
how he was
same question.
expressing
Like,
it.
what is sonship? Like,
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And obviously, Brian or Hunter or anybody in the chat, you're welcome to add anything to it. So I think the idea is, and I wrote down some things. So let me find what I wrote so that I can make sure that I'm saying it right. I wrote a lot of things down here. Okay, so to me, the idea is that as believers, that we are adopted into God's family. So we become one of his sons, right? Obviously, in creation, we are one of God's children because he's created us, right? But that through Christ, we are adopted into his family and gain all of the privileges of being in that family: salvation, the Holy Spirit, this righteousness, the fruits of the Spirit, the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. We gain access to all of those things. And I think one of the things that I kind of marked in here, let me make sure this makes sense. It says, we were made to participate in the life of God in fellowship with the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit as dearly beloved sons. And it's this idea of who do we trust and where is our trust in? Now, I have a great dad. I have an incredible dad. Yeah, Brian, you said right. He told his sons they could never lose that position as sons in the family. And he talks a lot in here about fatherlessness. And so when you think about your dad, and he had a dad that I think loved him very well, but was not a great example, at least based on how he kind of describes it. So he talks about fatherlessness, and some stats that he says is in the U.S., grades 1 through 12, 17.7 million students, 39% of students live in homes with absent of their biological fathers. So 39% of kids, grades 1 to 12 live in a home without their biological father. 72% of the population, according to 72% of the population, fatherlessness is the most significant family or social problem facing America. So it's this idea of a father. So when I say a father to you, what do you think of? Not the person, but what characteristics do you think of when I say father? When I say dad, what do you think of as that?
So I put someone who has or should have love and protection for you, or should at least express that and display that.
Yeah.
Just like God would for us. And that's when I was trying to think of what sonship means. That one of the things I wrote down is the fact that God does have love and protection for us, and it's kind of the same.
Okay, good.
yeah, I'd say somebody that leads by example.
Good. Ryan?
The sacrifice was the big one. Just putting the family before your own thoughts, wants, desires.
That's good. I think, again, I'm trying to find it all. I wrote things down on different pages, and sometimes they're sideways, and so it really throws me off. That for me, it's this idea of protection and rest, right? That when I picture dad, I picture whether it's an opportunity for me to get to be dad or for my dad or granddad or whatever, that the idea of a man that I look up to be able to hold you as a kid, right? And in And in that embrace, there's that validation, there's that protection, there's that unconditional love, there's that sacrifice, there's all of those things that y'all described. And you feel it all in that moment because you're there close to that father in your life. Does that make sense? And so as a son, I think the idea is, and in the sonship, it's this idea of tapping into that. And are we trusting, and it kind of makes more sense to me after the third chapter, is are we trusting God to be the dad in our lives, or are we trusting other things to lead us? Because based on what you said, Corey, it's the example, right? Well, Christ gave us an incredible example. Are we trusting God to lead us, or are we saying, I'm going to go do it on my own, right? I'm going to go do life on my own for my own reasons rather than trusting God to do those things. So I think that's the idea of sonship that he's describing is it's that mentality. Do we see God as father, or do we see God as a random, powerful dude that created the world? I don't use dude very often when in reference to God. But I think there's a very different relationship there, right? A boss has a lot of power. I don't have the same relationship with a boss as I do my dad. And a boss's authority over me, but my dad, I listen to and I trust and I value and I long to be in his presence and to be with him. So, yeah. And again, I think that's come a little bit more full circle for me these days is, my dad's cancer battle. And as we've thought about what life looks like, and I've had to contemplate life without my dad, it's hard to think about, him not being there. And so just trying to sit in that for a bit to go, okay, do I see God that way? So what are the challenges to seeing God as father? What do you think are some of the challenges in that?
So for me, I think distance is a big piece of that. I think it's really difficult to do that when I spend more time than I should distance and not connected or lack of communication with God. So it, like with your own father, it's going to be really hard to have a close, tight relationship if you never talk to each other. And if you do, it's just kind of in passing. Like, hey, I need this, or thanks for that, and that's it. That's a big piece for me.
It's good. Somebody else? And y'all feel free to add in the chat. Where do you struggle in seeing God as father?
I guess for me, it's, I think you had already spoke about it, John. It's fully trusting that I can't do everything on my own, even though I try to do everything on my own. My first thought is whenever things get difficult, isn't to get on my knees and start praying. It's, all right, how do I get myself out of this situation? What do I need to do to get us back on track?
Mm-hmm. That's good. Ryan?
I think so one of the sentences that I kind of underlined was the one that says, when we look at the mission of Jesus through a religious veil and see him as simply a merciful means to eternal salvation, we miss sonship entirely. The place of sonship was the foundation of Jesus's life, and it both attracted his students and filled them with ache and longing. I think a lot of times I see God the Father as God the Savior, and I see the salvation side of it, right? And I miss that softer side, that loving Father side, and I think that's a big miss. It's missing out on the probably majority of what I should be focusing on, is the fact that I am a son, and to a loving Father, unconditional loving Father, which is something that we'll never have here on earth. That's it.
It's kind of that thought that, God's not just there to save you from eternal death. He's there to provide and lead you through abundant life.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The salvation wasn't just so he could save a bunch of people. It was so that he could restore the relationship that was created from the beginning with Adam and Eve. And I think sometimes we forget that salvation isn't a checkbox and then you're done. The goal is that God desires all along to have a relationship with us. And, and I think sometimes for me, God becomes a vending machine of prayers. And it's someone that I trust and someone I go to, but there's not much relationship outside of, God, I want to pray for this person, or I want to pray for this, or I want to ask you for this, I want to praise who you are, those kind of things. But that there's not much of that give and take in a relationship where I'm coming to him with struggles and doubts and fears and the things that I would go to my dad to seek advice for. I'm not doing that with God when I'm not doing well. And I just go to God for the checklist of, hey, I received this prayer request at church today. I'm going to go pray for these things, kind of thing. So one of the things that I wrote down was, it's not that God isn't available, but rather that we aren't allowing ourselves to experience his fatherhood, which I wrote in parentheses, his validation and his influence in our lives. And I think that goes to you, Brandon, with this idea of distance. I think one of my challenges is that we're not going to always feel God. God isn't, okay, I can't say God is physically close, right? Because he's with us, omnipresent, all places at all times. The God can be everywhere. So God is present, and the Holy Spirit is with us. He gives us the Holy Spirit, but that we can't see him, and therefore it creates this distance, which is undeniable. And so how do we keep that? It's being consistent in our communication and our conversation with God, so that that distance doesn't grow, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Now, what about you guys? And I have a story. So if you guys don't have one, or I can tell my story first, but the idea that we've all experienced fatherlessness at a point in our lives, whether through a moment or through an example that internally breaks something within us. And he talks about in his, that he saw, I think it was him, or maybe it was an example he gave, but it's this idea of the piggy jar, right? That the piggy bank, that the dad and mom had to go to the kid to break the piggy bank, and therefore that kid, inside that kid, it broke to go, I need to help provide for this family. Has there ever been a moment?
His grandfather died, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so has there ever been a moment in your life that you can look back on and kind of taking this assessment where you're like, you know what? That had a greater impact on me than I thought it did. And it's this idea of fatherlessness. None of us, and Corey, I don't know your story well. I know the Pitts enough to know, Ron and Brandon to know they love their dad. They have a great dad. They see him all the time. I have an incredible dad who I definitely love. But my dad wasn't perfect. All right. My dad created some bad tendencies in me that I picked up from him. And so I want y'all to think about a story, or think about something, fatherlessness that kind of broke something in you. For me, I can remember very vividly as a kid. We were in Sherman, Texas, and my dad was a ham radio operator, right? Nerd of nerds. That's where I get it from. He's an engineer for life. And so he had a ham radio tower, and as kids, I don't know how old we were. We weren't that old, but we weren't that young, because my brother wanted to climb up on the ham radio tower and get on the roof. And I'm terrified of heights. Do not like them. Do not enjoy them. Just absolutely not. And I said no. And my dad called me a chicken. All right. Now, I guarantee you, I've never told my dad that story, because I guarantee you, if I told my dad that story, nowadays he'd probably make fun of me, but he would, it would break his heart a little bit to know that for 15, 20 years that this stuck with me. And I think in part of me, the desire of validation was that something in me broke that day, that I wasn't good enough for my dad. And this need to people please, and this need for validation, which I think is a part of my personality long before this, but I think it escalated in that moment. In that moment, I can remember vividly sticking with me for years and years and years and years. Again, I love my dad. My dad's an incredible, godly man, but I think that that's something of this fatherlessness that he talks about that breaks something inside of us. What about you guys?
don't know if I can think of a moment.
And it may not be a
Like,
moment. Maybe it's just in general.
So,
I know. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, I also have an amazing dad, an amazing relationship with my dad. He's been an amazing person in my life, somebody I can always go to for advice. You know, I can make fun of him in stressful situations, like whenever he gets upset, and it calms him down. We have a great relationship. And I'm wondering if everybody has like an experience with their dad, and it wasn't actually anything that he did. Um, but it's interesting that everybody has these things that seem to revolve around their dad. But anyways, I think it was junior high. My dad got cancer. We found out he got cancer, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I guess I couldn't fully process what was going to happen. It wasn't until like a few years ago that, kind of like what you were saying, John, I didn't realize the impact that it had on my life until I actually like sat down and thought about it. But like in that moment, like I didn't know what was gonna go on. I didn't know what was gonna happen. And then kind of like what he had laid out in the book, that person that you look up to, that's like Superman, strongest man in the world. Literally nothing can break this guy. Uh, in this helpless state, like after his surgery and everything, like I like we don't know what to expect. We don't know what's gonna happen. Um, I guess that was kind of the breaking point for me, where it's like, you know, my oldest brother is away in the military. Like I'm just here with my mom. Like, am I gonna have to take care of my mom? Like, am I gonna have to take care of my dad now? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just interesting that I was just thinking. It seems like everybody has these moments that seem to center around their dad.
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes back to the stats. And Brian, yours is a great example. He said that his alcoholic dad ran out on their family when he was 11.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian, I bet you could talk for days about how that impacted and changed your trajectory of life because of your dad's sins and because of your dad's brokenness. And I think some of it is the God designed part of us that longs for a father. And I think the stats show it, that those who live in fatherless homes are more likely to be in jail, or more likely to have trouble, or more likely to struggle in school, or less like and again, you see stories of the challenges that they have to overcome, that dads are so important in our lives. And I think so much of that is God designed, and goes back to the purpose of this book is going, I want to be someone that I'm going to let my kids down. I'm human. I'm going to have my own, oh, you're a chicken moment. But my hope is for them to see me as a godly dad, because I think you're right. I mean, yeah. So I think it's part of how God designed us, that God designed dads with that role in a family. And whether the dad is gone completely, the dad makes a mistake or takes his own weaknesses, and it imparts upon you, or anywhere in between, that it hurts.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Y'all have anything?
Brandon, I don't know that there was any specific time, but you know, as if I'm thinking about it, like you guys, we had a great dad. He was always there, coached all our teams, you know, growing up. Like he was always super supportive of us and in our lives involved and everything. Love my dad. Wouldn't change anything for the world. But I think like my dad was also very he pushed us. He pushed us to be like in the sports stuff. He pushed us to be better, get better, you know, practice and do all this stuff. And like, I think it wasn't a single moment, but I remember throughout my childhood wanting my dad to be proud of me.
Mm.
And like, maybe to a fault, it was like, hey, push, try and be better, like always try and, you know, be better, which is a good thing to do, but it was almost to a fault to where it was like, I forget to actually say that I'm proud of what you are doing. But yes,
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
like it's like that growing up, and you know, in college and through my professional career and stuff, it's been kind of like that time that I've really thought about it and really understood, you know, I just want my dad's approval. I want my dad's, you know, I want him to be proud of who I am, of where I am, of what I'm doing. But yeah, it wasn't like one single moment, but I think that's like the thing that kind of changed or reframed my thinking around it.
That's good. Brendan, you got anything to add or no?
No, I don't think so. It's probably in the same vein that
Yeah.
Ryan was talking about.
No.
I think same experience.
Totally understand. So, kind of to finish up this chapter, unless y'all have anything else significant to jump on with it, is this the kind of the one of the prayers that he ended with was, "I ask you to father me." He says, "Father, I confess I'm your son, and you are my father, and I ask you to father me by day and by decade. You have my yes." And I underline that because I think that ultimately, as we talk about defining sonship, I think that ultimately shows it the best for me, that I'm asking God to be my father. Well, what does that mean? That means that I'm asking him to take control. I'm asking him to lead. I'm asking him to give me wise counsel. I'm asking him to help me when I fall down, right? Who's the first person I call when I have car troubles? My dad. Or I have something wrong with my house. I could Google it, I could YouTube it, but I call my dad because it's the guy that I look up to and that I know is often going to have an answer. And it's this idea of going, okay, God, I'm asking you to father me, for you to lead me as your son, as you've promised that you would, right? And so I think that's ultimately the picture of sonship that he gives, is this idea of that we are God's sons, and we need to take the onus to see ourselves that way and to see God as Father, because it can change our relationship with him and can deepen it and can expand it based on how we view him. So, all right.
I would,
Oh yeah,
I would
yeah.
say
Go
there
ahead.
was one more chapter that really hit me hard personally. It was kind of in the middle during the what's not working section. That section in general, I wasn't a big fan of, just because of how guilty I felt reading that. So one of the things he was talking about, let's see if I can find it real quick. He was talking about,
Tell me the page when you find it.
yeah, it's page 19. It's towards the top of page 19. Oh, constantly feeling behind.
Oh, dude, I underline that.
Yeah, the sense of being behind touched every part, every category of my masculine report card, from fitness to finance, relationships to responsibilities, from my marriage to my general hopes for maturing. Like right now, I feel like I'm making the appropriate steps, especially doing these these books each month is a huge help. Just getting me more in the habit of not. I guess it's just taking the steps so that I don't feel as far behind. But I'd say over the last few years, that has been a big one, whether that is financially, physically, relationally, with my family, with friends, just always feeling like I'm behind where I want to be. That part hit me hard. And also, he has a quote from A.W. Tozer, and I'm a big A.W. Tozer fan. I love reading things that he's written. But one of the things he talks about is Tozer calling this term practical atheist. And he says it's a genuine reality of and connecting with God. Wait, I missed it. Sorry. Believing God exists in the past and in the future, but for all practical purposes, a genuine reality of and connecting with God doesn't exist. So essentially saying, aware of God in your past and in your future, but is not in the present. And I think that also, again, kind of hits where I am right now and trying to bring God into the present by things like what we're doing today. But yeah, those two things specifically hit pretty hard.
That's good. No, I actually did the same page, and I kind of marked the spot on it. Let me get back to it. I came face to face with all that I was carrying and a terrible emotional weight of the idea that life was up to me in nearly every arena of my life. And then I underlined, and I felt behind, that I couldn't control the outcomes and avoid shame, which I think carries us really good into chapter 3. Chapter 3 was really good as I kind of dove into it. And I want to start off with a bit of a definition cycle here, because I think it's important to start off with, what does it mean for true self and false self, because those are phrases that we're going to use a lot. All right, I'm going to bring this on screen here. Corey, I'm going to not hide your head, but I'm going to be pretty close. All right, because I want to see what you guys say, because I think that it's important to, it took me halfway through the chapter to feel like I understood what he meant by false self and true self, and I think it's important for us to start with that. So if you were to describe or define true self and false self, of which I did as well. So we can just add to it. But what are some things that stood out to you, true self and false self, to help kind of define those things? And I'm going to type
I
them
kind
out.
of struggled with defining those.
Okay.
and
Oh, that's
fully
totally fine.
understanding them.
Yeah. No, that's
The
all
only
good.
thing I could really think of is, I guess, the false self of what I believe to be true about myself versus what God knows is true about
That's good.
myself.
Instead of what God. Wait, how'd you say it? What I believe to be true about myself instead of.
What God knows is true about myself.
That's good. Ryan or Corey, do you have anything you want to add to it?
I am terrible with I'm not a wordsmith. I'm not a
That's okay, I
wordsmith
don't
like
need
you
wordsmith.
guys. Okay, let's see if we can break this down. So the way that I look at it, it's like all the earthly stuff that you try to surround yourself to surround yourself with to like hide all of your insecurities about yourself. Like yeah, I have a technical job and I try to strive really hard in that because I'm terrified of people thinking that I'm not intellectual at all. I don't know.
That's good. No, I think it's good. Ryan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? True self or false self? That doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, nothing really, you know,
Significant.
interesting to add. Like, I think it's the same thing. It's like, and the thing that just came to mind is like a false wall in your house. You know, it's like the true self is what is true, and the false self is like it's like a facade. It's just something you're putting out there that is not really who you are, but it's who you think you want to be. You know, and it's hiding something else about you, insecurities or whatever it is that it's hiding.
That's good. Brian, did I spell facade right? I don't know how to spell facade. How do you spell
Don't ask
facade?
me.
Yeah, you just said it's
No,
not.
I like that analogy
Yeah.
because if you think about that false wall mentality, like, or the analogy of that, think that that's not load bearing. It's not gonna be sustained
Yeah.
under weight.
That's good.
A real wall is
It-
gonna be
yeah.
load bearing.
Yeah. It serves no purpose. Or it's just aesthetically it serves a purpose. So appearance outside, you know.
Cool. So I wrote down for true self, I just put Genesis 1:27, that we are made in the image of God, and all that goes along with that. So when we see characteristics of God, that when we are living in our true self, that we should see those characteristics in us: compassionate, kind, gentle, patient, slow to anger, you know, all those things that we see as characteristics of God. And then I put on here also for true self that they're reliant on God the Father. See how I brought that in for the last chapter? And I think that ultimately that when we are living as our true self, that one evidence of that is that we are going to be reliant on God the Father, that we're going to be relying on God. We're going to be going to him, again, based on the last chapter we just had, that we're going to be looking to him for validation, for approval, for direction, for counsel, for all the things that we need for support, is that we go to God rather than taking on ourselves. For me, for false self, what I have is that simply it's about us. Most importantly is that it's about us, and I wrote on here too that I think it's Satan's goal to end up here on a false self, that's to do it on our own strength, our own purpose, our own purposes, our own goals, and our own ambition, passions, all those things that are us focused. And I think that when we look at how Satan, and he talks a lot about this, and I underlined a ton of stuff in this chapter, but when he talks about this, that the picture I got was not that Satan is, I put it actually on the bottom of page 32. It says the most dangerous dimension of the false self is that it often works for us, providing false nourishment, satiating the need for identity, validation apart from God. And I wrote next to that to me, that's Satan's goal, is that's Satan's job. It's not to show up on our doorstep with pitchforks and his tail and go, hey, you want to go do bad things? Let's go do bad things. Like, that's not how Satan works in my life. Satan works in my life by doing that. Is the most dangerous dimension of the false self is that it often works for us, is that it makes things seemingly better, right? We talk, being a youth pastor for years, you talk about sin. You talk about how sin feels good. Like the reality is his sin doesn't feel bad initially. It feels good. And so, and then it's the after that's bad. And so it's this idea that sometimes this false self, this self-focused, this us-focused thing rather than God-focused ultimately works for us, but it provides a false nourishment, right? That it's not something that's lasting. It's just building on this identity or this need for identity and validation apart from God. And that to me, that's how Satan works in my life, is that he keeps pushing for those things. And, instead of reading your Bible tonight, why don't you hop on TikTok for an hour and scroll through, or hop on Twitch and watch this person, or, stay up and do this thing or that thing. And that's resting, that you taking a mental break. When the reality is, no, I know I need to be spending time with God. And so instead of doing that, I'm doing something else and I'm getting nourished, but it's just false. It's temporary. It's not, it has no depth to it. Does that make sense? How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
So where do you feel like then Satan hit you in that? How do you feel like, how do you feel like that hits for you guys? And it may be some same things we've already said. When it's your false self, where do you feel like you struggle?
Well, for me, so he gives another analogy, and this is one that I forgot about, and just reading through this again, again, that speaks to me. And he talks about this Thomas Keating, quote, or whatever he talks about the false self and the true self, being that the false self is the center of gravity of the false self is itself, and the center of gravity of the true self is God. But then he says the false self is like a bicycle wheel that's balanced only when spinning. As soon as it slows, it becomes imbalanced until it falls down. In contrast, the center of gravity of the true self is God. It is therefore able to rest and doesn't need a constant state of doing in order to be at peace. I think for me, especially in my line of work and stuff, like that's where I get tangled a lot of times, is just I'm constantly, I go, I'm busy, I fill my schedules, I do stuff. And for me, that brings me a sense of peace to do that, because every little bit that I do means every little bit further I get in my companies and stuff. And like, if when I feel like I'm slowing down, I feel like I'm being lazy. I'm not, putting in the effort. Something's going to fall, and that's when I start getting fearful, and I think that really spoke to me as like, I need to be at rest, but at rest in the right place, not in my false self, because I'll never be at rest in my false self, but be at rest in my true self.
That's good. Well, and I think and with all of this, there are good balances to it, right? You being a driven, passionate person is not a bad thing. That's how God's designed you. But when we take it in the wrong direction, and we take it when the focus is us or our strength or our direction, then it starts to get destructive around us. For me, I wrote that I'm obsessive. I do things that I get excited about or that I get passionate about at 120%. The number of things I have in my life that I have purchased because I get really, what were you going to say?
It's a rank.
Yeah, exactly. That I get really, really excited about. And it has been construction things. It was building furniture, which I suck at. I'm so bad at it. And but man, I bought tools. I bought so many tools for it, and I bought all this sort of stuff. And I was like, you know what? Most recently, I'm gonna wash my truck, right? I got this new truck. I'm gonna wash my truck. Well, man, I went out and I bought a power washer, and I bought soap, and I bought cannons, and I bought 45 towels, and I bought sprays, and I'm using it and I'm doing it. But like, this is my personality. If I get into something, I get into it, and I'm gonna research it, and I'm gonna spend 100 hours doing it. And that's good in some areas, but it's bad in others. And when I don't have it directed towards the right thing, it becomes destructive to me and to the people around me. Yes, Brian, I'm the same way. So, what about you, Brandon or Corey? What's something that you feel like that might hit close to you with the false self?
I honestly, I exactly what both you and Ryan said.
Yeah, I
Obsessive.
was trying to think of
We're
something.
constantly striving to get to that next level. It's just being misplaced.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the same.
That's good. So one of the things I also saw in this chapter that I liked was on page 35, he says, after the fall, identity was called into question. And he goes down just a little bit further than that, right before that diagram that he puts is the reaching to fill the ache of the masculine soul apart from God. And that ultimately what I wrote is that all men are striving to fill this void, this identity void of who am I, and this void apart from God, and I think it's, what's his name? Who talks about the God-shaped void in your heart. Anyways, and maybe C.S. Lewis, but that one of the voids as men that we are trying to fill is that because of sin, there is a void in us for this leadership, for this drive, for this power, this kingship that he talks about, and that we often fill it with other things rather than for God. And that's where identity is so often found. So, what are some other things that struggle or that stuck out to you in this chapter?
I think so. One of the things is talking about the false stuff is habitual, but he gave this example, and he said, when my wife says, "Hey Morgan, I'd like you to cancel your next adventure trip you have planned with a friend," I can feel my body. He says, "I can feel my body react as an expression, something being threatened deep within, and all this like negative stuff." But then, and the inverse side, he says, if his wife says, "Hey, there's an opening on the calendar. Why don't you just take a day of solitude, head out, joyful adventure of your choice?" And he's like, I don't have to think about it or pray about it. I have a reactive, predictable response. It's like I'm very happy about that, and that was like very convicting to me because I'm a very structured person. I love like schedules. Like everything in my life is scheduled, and when something gets in my way in scheduling, something came up like that phrase that would not be good. I would struggle with that.
Your false self rears up very quickly with that.
Very,
Yeah.
and in an inverse, like if things are taken out of my schedule and my time is now freed up and I can do, or if it's just Angela's like, "Hey, I got the kids tonight. You go out, do something fun," then I'm gonna react totally different to that. Than,
Right.
"Hey, I have something tonight. I need you to
Uh-huh.
take care of the kids."
Yeah.
Oh man. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's one thing that was very, very convicting to me because that is something that I struggle with is like being trapped in my false self there.
Yeah, very much so. That's good. Yeah, I think we all struggle with that. Brian said, "Could take a day of solitude." Said, "No wife ever." Like that's the struggle. That's the struggle. All right. What about you guys, Brandon or Corey?
And I think one of the parts where he's talking about how he attempted to care for his wife that was going through depression, anxiety, and just in a really difficult mental point in her life. He was trying to do what he thought was best for her, but it was really it wasn't really thinking of her. It was trying to provide for her, but not in the way that was actually best for her. It was more just like I guess maybe a reflection of what he just felt would be best based on what would be best for him, kind of thing. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the way that I took it essentially was just I'll fall into that category of when things are difficult, I'll do what I feel is best, but not actually taking consideration the feelings or the emotions of other people. It's just kind of a reactionary. And I think it's also kind of I don't know how you feel about like the love languages, and that concept, but I do feel like there's some validity to the fact that you give what your own love language is more frequently than what the person needs to receive. And it's kind of that same line of thinking. It's like I do what I feel is best because that's how I would react the best to to provide with that situation. I'm not thinking about the person I'm doing that for.
Yeah, definitely. So I wrote in mine kind of on that topic of my relationship with my wife, because I think that a lot of what he was is he felt like he was fixing things, but in reality he was actually making things worse. And kind of the example he gave was that, and he didn't realize it until years and years and years later, that when she was open about no, you've actually been smothering me this whole time, and he had no clue about it. That one of the things that I wrote was that has helped me in my marriage tremendously. And this is not, 15 years we've been doing this. This is like the last couple of years that I feel like we finally hit the ground running on this, is being open and being honest early in the process has helped my marriage and me tremendously. I'm not worried about my wife finding out. I can remember early in the years that I was in charge of our finances and I did a crappy job, and I put us like $8,000 in debt because I just couldn't say no, and I was passive at times, and then I would try and hide it so that she didn't know. And I can remember having to be in open and tell her, babe, we are like $8,000 in credit card debt. And my whole thought was, she's never going to love me again. Right. It goes back to that validation, that self, that it was one of the lowest moments of my life, of my married life for sure, because I just felt like I had let her down and our marriage down and everything, and I couldn't do enough to get myself out of the situation. And so when I talk about finding out, that's really what it is that because I'm now open and I'm now honest about more things, and we have more conversations, I felt that I don't have to worry about that. Oh, she's going to find this out, and then it's going to bring my struggle for validation in to the equation. Well, I've got to hide this because I need to fix it first, and then I can reveal it. Right? It's that that by being open and by being honest, the result is that we've grown, we trust each other more, and it's ultimately deepening of our relationship because the communication is there, because the trust is there, and I was telling someone, I was doing marriage counseling yesterday, premarital counseling, and the conversation was, man, I wouldn't trade where I'm at 15 years in for the first year of marriage, which is great, right? It's great physically, it's great emotionally, it's great all the things. I wouldn't trade it for a second to where I am now, because I feel like we've grown so much, and I had to grow a tremendous amount over the last 5 to 7 years. But kind of what you're saying, Brandon, that kind of took me there, is that I don't always sometimes take the heart of someone else. I just want to fix it and I want to do it. And I think I know what's best, and I don't ask, and I just do it. And in doing that, sometimes I make things worse than better. Yeah.
I can totally relate to that. Yeah, we've been through a couple of periods like that in our marriage where since whether it's been finances and relationships and stuff, but like a couple instances that were pretty heavy that we had to work through. But since then, it's been 100% open, and it's been open early, honest early. And you're right, that is such a game changer in a marriage. I feel like it's almost like a superpower in a marriage. Like I feel like we're always on the same page about everything now. Like because we bring each other to that page so early in the process, like there's no way to get off page from each other because we're both just right there walking on the same stuff. And whether it's I struggled or I messed up with this financial thing or this whatever, or made this decision, whatever it is, like every time we bring it to each other early, it's only strengthening our relationship, and it's only helping us to continue to do that. Yeah, I think that's such a powerful thing.
That's good. Yeah, Brian, it's good. So Brian said he could totally relate to that. I need to hide this until I can fix it, which I think probably as husbands, we probably all do at points. He says, now Carol has full transparency in our bank accounts and credit card accounts. I know for us, yeah, my wife has it, but she doesn't ever look at it. It's me going, hey, we got $200 for the next 5 days or the next 3 days, the next week and a half. Like, it's like, we have this much money for this amount of time. This is how much we have in our savings. Like I don't want to pull out and do this different stuff. And having more of those conversations. What's interesting is, and I want to be, I don't remember, I guess this is the last chapter we read, is what's interesting is I feel like in my marriage that it has allowed my wife to trust me more, so that like in this house buying process that I feel as though we're at a point where she can trust me more because I'm being open and honest and communicating better. Therefore, she's giving me more leeway to lead. Does that make sense? And do you guys sense that in your own marriages?
Yep.
Is when you're doing a good job, it's almost like they feel comfortable that they can step back and go, okay, well, now that you're doing the job that God's designed you to do, I'm going to step back and don't feel like I have to fill that void. And it's such an encouraging thing. And it doesn't happen all the time. I fail at that all the time. But like, I think that's where I've seen some of the growth is that I feel like she wants me to lead more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. It's kind of like our kids. I mean, the more that they are open with you and do the right thing, or just the more open conversations you have with them, the more you feel like you trust them and can let them do things on their own without having to kind of helicopter parent.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else about the false self? I want to talk about the true self in just a minute, but anything else about the false self that kind of stuck out to you guys in the chapter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm looking, like I said, I made a ton of notes on this. Okay. So this was something, and I'm going to read it because I couldn't read it right there in the silence. So I'm going to read it. I want to see if it fits. But I wrote here, we should talk about this on stream. Our capacity for habit and unconscious action is part of God's provision for us so that we can live creative and dynamic lives in a complex material world. So that kind of comes as part of this idea that he had that's, we do a lot of things out of habit, and we do a lot of things out of unconsciousness. And that's part of God's design for us, that God's provision for us so that we can live creative and dynamic lives. And his idea is, and again, let's not talk about this on stream right now. Maybe this would be a really good like pre-conversation to open us up next time. But it's this idea, to finish the thought, it's this idea that if we had to think about every little thing that our subconscious just does unconsciously, we would get nothing done, right? I can remember my kids, when they were born, they were in the NICU for 2 weeks, and the most basic thing they couldn't do, which was remember to breathe. And so as a part of the NICU, their brains hadn't developed enough to remember to breathe. And so they would have these apnea moments where alarms would go off and their brains would they would just stop breathing. And you would have to flick them on their heel or on their arm or rub their stomach really hard, really quick. And it would, that shock to their system would like wake their brains up and remind them to start breathing. And so again, remind me, that'd be a really good opening to talk about some of that subconscious things and how it allows us to be creative. But for the true self, One of the things I marked was that our souls being rooted in God and being informed not only by His counsel and His direction, but also by His life coursing through us. That's our true self. That when our souls are rooted in God, and that we're being informed and guided and directed not only by His counsel, right? So through Scripture, but in direction, but also by His life coursing through us. How do you guys see that play out in your life? How do you see the true life playing out in your life? When is that? When can you tell it's going well? What are you doing for it to be going well?
I'd say going back to what Ryan was talking about, that book where it's like, your wife is like, "Hey, I need you to cancel this trip," instead of immediately getting upset or angry or, actually taking a step back and understanding that she doesn't want you to not have a good time. She has a valid reason as to why she needs you not to do that, and kind of like one of those slow to anger type things.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, you get kind of upset, but it's like, okay, obviously she has a good reason. Let's discuss it. And I think that's maybe an example. I don't know.
So when you find yourself being slow to anger or not quick to react, maybe quick to have patience and process, that's when you're seeing yourself maybe living more that true self, that way that God designed you to be. That's good.
Yeah.
Ryan, Brandon?
Trying to think of a good example. I mean, I know that the moments that I see the true self more often is when I have closed the gap between myself and God.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's maybe a week or two that I'm getting more consistent and daily quiet times, or my prayer life's improving, or things like that. That I at least see the evidence of it in those times.
That's really good. Ryan?
I think for me, it's when I'm able to genuinely rest. I think that's when it's more the true self come out in me is, when I'm able to be at peace with the rest, and it's resting in God, but it's also just being present. It's all those things, it's not being in that go mentality, and it's being able to rest and be present in what's happening in my family's lives and kids and stuff, or resting in the word, or just listening to worship music or something, like but that feeling of being able just to settle my heart and just rest and not worry about what's happening over here, and just focus on either my family or God, or my relationship with God, things like that. I think that's when I really see myself really acting out that true self.
That's good. That's really good. Mine would be that when I put in here when I'm good, and I like in quotation, right? When I'm doing good, when I'm kind of living in that true self, the way that God designed me to be. I think it's a mix of godly reactions, like you said, Corey, patience, contemplation, conversation, processing, trusting. And so for me, the house right now is like right in the midst of it. There have been times when things fall through that I just get super frustrated really quick. And it takes me a bit to go, no. This whole time I've prayed that God, that if this is not the place for us to be, that you wouldn't let it happen. So why am I getting upset when it's not happening? And it's me trying to take control of it. It's me trying to take control of the situation. Well, we can make more money if we did this, or, no, we need to push hard and we need to do this, or no, we need to lead. No, we need to make this decision. I can do those things, but I find myself when I see the evidence when I'm having godly reactions to moments, when I'm patient, when I'm contemplating things and being slow, kind of in that processing, when I'm having conversations, when I'm trusting. And what I wrote is the end result is the same as if it was my false self, which is not untrue. Sometimes I respond in the same way as if my false self. The difference, though, is that I have peace. So we can all fake being good in a good place in our true self, and like acting in the way that God designs us to be, but we can technically be doing it on our own and for our own reasons and our own motivations. You know, he talks about the inner and the outer. On the outside, we look good, but on the inside, we're not even close. Like you said, Brandon, there's that distance between us and God. That for me, it's just this peace, knowing that God's leading, a peace knowing that God's in control. And even to go with what you said, Ryan, just this ability to rest in that fact and to be still and to have this peace and this, you know, kind of to carry it all back is that it's like I'm being, you know, it's like a kid, right? There's anxiety, there's stress, there's tears, there's anger, there's all these things that can be built up. But when I get in my dad's arms, that all of that washes away and there's just this warmth and this comfort and this peace. And that to me is when I'm living in my true self. I sense and I feel those things in the decisions that I'm making and the things that I'm doing and the way that I'm responding to people. It just feels right. If that makes sense. So
I can almost feel, like, physically feel my muscles releasing to Jenna in those moments. Like, I'm
Yeah.
fully, like, releasing and resting.
yeah, it's good. Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you boys for another one. This is a good one. So we've got chapters, if anybody's reading along with us, we have got chapters, I'm looking it up. Give me a second here.
4, 5, and 6, I think.
Yeah. 4, 5, and 6 for next week. So again, Becoming a King by Morgan Snyder. Even if you're not a man, you can read this book. This would be a great book, even for women to read on things to encourage your husband with or to be looking for in a man, you know, if you're single, and date, you know, looking to date and stuff. So awesome. Thank you, boys. I appreciate it. That is it for that part of the stream. And we will be back next week with another session of it.
See you.
See.